exciting stream for you today. We are talking with members of the Until You Fall team who worked on the 1.3 update. And so we're going to take all types of questions from you through the live chat, through Discord as well. We're looking at the Discord server as well to get some questions. We're going to talk about the quality of life updates, the two-handed weapons, the challenges that the team overcame of putting all that content in, and then anything else in between with the studio and Until You Fall. So please do not hesitate to put your questions and comments in, and we will try to get to as many as possible. And yeah, so before we get started, again, some housekeeping. If you have any questions, put them in the live chat. Our live chat moderator is Adam Kuda or Kudakuma that you would recognize in the Discord. So thank you, Adam, for your help here. And yeah, looking forward to it. So the question that we are going to have Trace and Rob think about, and I'll ask them again at the end, is what new option have you seen players enjoy of the 1.3 update, or look forward to players to discover in 1.3 as they continue to play the game. So let that ruminate as we take this 45 minutes to an hour of conversation about Until You Fall in the 1.3 update. But before we dive in, let's introduce who these people are. So let's have Rob go first and then Trace.
Hi, I'm Rob Gordon. I've gosh, I think I'll be at Shell Games for like 18 years coming up in a few months here.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I'm classically trained as an engineer, but I was the project director on the 1.3 release of Until You Fall. So that means if there's something you don't like about it, come complain to me. Trace.
Hi everyone, I'm Trace. I'm a game designer here at Shell. I started full-time last week actually, so still fairly new. But I was a fellow here at Shell during from October until April, and that's when I worked on Until You Fall 1.3. So that was my first project here.
Good stuff. And for those who might be new to Dinner with the Devs, Dwayne Waite here, marketing manager at Shell Games. And I was just telling Trace right before, I believe that this is our 51st or 52nd video of Dinner with the Devs. So I am thrilled for this to continue to keep going. And I am always so thankful for our developers to take times out of their busy schedules, especially after the day, to talk more with me about what they do, and especially with the fans of what they do. So thank you guys so much. So with that being said, the point of this conversation is talking about the 1.3 update. So let's start by taking a look at the trailer,
Yeah.
and then we'll continue with the convo. So here's that trailer.
The Unraveled will show no mercy. Crush them! Magnificent!
All right.
What a cool
The
trailer.
Until You Fall 1.3 update. Two-handed weapons, quality life updates. So how excited was the team about adding those quality life improvements first and foremost before we get into some of the more fun things?
Uh, man, I think we were excited in part to be coming back to Until You Fall as a property because it's been something that I think we're proud of it. I think it's a great experience. It's a great game. But unfortunately, we just hadn't been able to carve out time from our, the busy schedule of the devs to be able to come back to it because, it has a great fan base. Like we have a lot of people who really love this game, and they had good suggestions. They had valid complaints about some things that could be better and should be better. And so I was excited that we got to close that loop, that we got to like talk directly with a lot of the folks who were in the Until You Fall Discord server, talk to them directly about what they didn't like, and be able to carve out some of this phase's development to be able to revisit some of those things. It's not often in this industry that you get to work with a great game that people love, and like, man, as a developer, you just kind of feed off that energy, like in a good way, not like a vampiric bad way, but the when we would be able to like watch people play the game when they were beta testing the 1.3 release, it was, you don't quite realize the level of investment that some players have in the experience until like you watch them play and you see how fast and how good they are. And like, Until You Fall is a game where like muscle memory and mastery is a really big part of it. So coming in and watching someone like play for us, like show us how they play the game so that we could make a better experience for everybody. Just seeing, it was pretty obvious when we watched them play just how much they had invested in this game and how good they had gotten on it. And I don't know, like seeing someone get so much enjoyment out of something that you helped build, that's just like game dev fuel.
Absolutely, and a lot of the quality of life features we tried to add, like smooth turning, for example, were direct requests from the fans. So it felt wonderful to get some of these long requested features into the game.
Good stuff. And thank you guys so much for bringing up the point of using the beta testing and using fans from the Discord and that whole process of beta testing. So we'll probably dive a little bit more into that. So along with quality of life improvements, you also did some localization updates. Oh yeah, and thank you, Adam. Adam's bringing up right now that there are a couple of beta testers in the chat. So for those who beta tested, Maxima, got Nate, Cyber, thank you guys so much. You gave so much great feedback to the dev team. So thank you.
We couldn't have done it without you.
Totally. Yes. Their effort, their love for the game. We were able to build on that and make it that much better for the final 1.3 release, for sure.
So along with the quality of life updates, you also tackled localization. Like what was all involved with that? I mean, that itself is an update that people would just put by itself, but you guys tackled so much.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's a lot.
It was. Thankfully, we were able to rely upon a great external studio, Keyword Studios. They handled the expertise in the 8 additional languages that we localized the game into. And so thankfully, they could help us sort of. Our job was to kind of line up the content, get it over to them, give them all the context they needed to translate it well, have it come back to us, and then our job became, okay, here's the content, here's the new text in Spanish, for example, and let's stick it in game and make sure it looks good and is understandable too, now that it's in the context of the game. Like for those who aren't aware, the first pass was, here's all the text in the game, they translate it, send it back to us as a big spreadsheet, we push it into the game, tweak things so that things look good, that everything fits within the UI. And then there's the second phase, which is called the localization quality assurance, or localization QA, where we send a version of the game that like supports Spanish text over. The Keyword Studios folks, they have folks who are proficient in Spanish, play the game and just make sure that like everything makes sense. That oftentimes like small word choices will come back for tweaks that need to be made, because now that they're seeing it like in the UI, in the context of the game experience, they realize, you know what, that's not the right verb. It should be this verb instead.
And to your point, Maxima has this. Miss Maxima VR has this comment that they actually sound better than the original version. But like you were saying, it's because of that care that they took in the Spanish language and making sure that translated right. That's really cool. That it's not a straight translation. It's what makes sense into that.
Yeah,
I find it really quite interesting. We were calling this the two-handed weapon update, but originally the plan for this update was translation and localization, and then putting in two-handed weapons if we had the time. and we had the time, so we were able to get all of these features in. But yeah, localization was our number one priority.
Right.
Very cool. So, speaking of, we do have a couple of questions. Let's see if we could take another one. See, Syvern from the Discord and one of the beta testers, they asked, what was one of the biggest challenges in developing 1.3?
Well, I do have one. So one of the designers at Schell Games who was on a lot of the previous phases of development was Patrick Jalbert, and unfortunately he shifted jobs to a different company like in the middle of development of this phase, and as painful as that was to lose someone who, uh, was arguably one of the key developers in making Until You Fall what it is today. We did have him for the first half of our schedule, and that did allow us. He did a lot of great work to get the three new two-handed weapons into the experience, and into a good place to the point where we could get it across the finish line and get it out to a level of quality that we were happy with. The challenge was, from the day Patrick said, "Hey, everybody, I like this team, I like this project, but this cool opportunity came up that I cannot pass up." So from when he left the studio to go on to a great opportunity, I don't begrudge him that at all. Unfortunately, that made it a little bit harder for the rest of the dev team to sort of fill the void, the big void. Like once he was gone, it was pretty obvious how big of a void he left, because he was carrying so much weight. He was doing so much great design, and as a vision holder, I think he was doing a lot on that front as well. So we missed him terribly when he left. But that said, he did still do a lot to set us up for success before he did leave. So I'm thankful for that.
I'd say some of the biggest challenges we had, I don't know, some of the technical challenges, just in like the engineering side of things, proved to be really problematic with the two-handed weapons. We had a bug we were calling the missed crits bug, where if you'd swing too fast, it would miss a critical hit, and that plagued us for months. Ken Hilf, one of our engineers, was able to fix that luckily, with some tricky engineering powers. I still don't understand the extent of it as a designer, but he worked some magic and we were able to get it figured out. But there were some really tricky technical problems.
Good stuff. Yeah, I mean that engineering magic there, it's a whole different level. Yeah, that
Oh,
I don't
absolutely.
understand either, but whenever it works, it's great. So
Ooh, I've got one more challenge, and that
Yeah, go for it.
was I think the learning curve on Until You Fall is pretty steep. Let me rephrase that. I think the depth to which you can invest in Until You Fall and get rewarded by like the skill ceiling of Until You Fall is very high. Like when I first started the project, one of my goals was, okay, just get through like all three tiers of a run, like defeat the bad guy. And I thought, oh, this will take like a couple nights, like during the first couple of weeks of development. Oh, how wrong I was. Like, even though I got to tier 3 fairly quickly, like the difficulty of the bad guys, like, you hit a point where like you're fighting a lot of very difficult high level enemies, and like managing those enemies well and quickly is like a new skill that I hadn't really had to deal with up to that point. It's like, okay, let's figure out how to do that. And eventually I got to the point where I'm in the final boss room and fighting the boss, and like learning the patterns of its attacks for the first time. Like, oh, it killed me, but okay, I'm not going to make that I'm not going to die to that particular attack next time. And that just kept going. Like it didn't stop. And by the end of development, I still feel like there were aspects to the game, there were weapons in the game that I didn't feel like I had mastered well enough to be able to just out of my brain pick like the right path to go between like A and B on a certain thing. And thankfully in that regard, we had our beta playtesters who have put in the hours and do have the experience to be able to give us great advice on where they think a certain thing should go. And I think that really helped make the 1.3 release a lot better than what it would otherwise have been given how deep of a game this is and how hard it is to develop your own until you fall skills to the point where you can make really informed, intuitive decisions about how to design things for a good experience. So kudos to the beta playtesters. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely. So, Trace, yeah, I guess you guys already have started talking a little bit about this, but I want to dig a little bit deeper about the two-handed weapons and the engineering design behind it. What challenges did some of the team or did the team have to overcome to get the two-handed weapons working? I mean, not just working, but working across MetaQuest and Rift, Steam, Viveport, because my understanding those are all different systems. So what was the process in tackling? Was it platform by platform, or did you work concurrently with them? So like, what if you can give us an idea? A lot of people don't understand how this development works. So if you can just give them a little bit a peek behind the curtain of what that looks like.
Sure, and Rob may be able to speak more to this than I can as an engineer himself. But I believe most of the work went into kind of the rigs of the weapons themselves, rather than like the control schemes. The control schemes matched, I guess, fairly well between all of the different systems. You press a button on one controller, and that translates to some action, and you can just map that to another button on a different controller. So a lot of the work, if I'm not mistaken, came from getting the weapons to feel good in your hands, making sure they swung right, making sure grabbing the weapons was satisfying and easy to do, ungrabbing the weapons. Rob, did you have a comment on that?
I think one aspect is we tend to have Rifts or Quests is kind of our default VR headset that's attached to our development machines here at work. And we do definitely rely upon, I think, our internal QA team to kind of help sanity check stuff when it's like, hey, can you play this on an index and tell us how that feels? And just like the beta play testers, our QA team has a lot of hours in Until You Fall, so they're a great internal go-to place for, hey, is this going to work with this controller that we haven't tried yet internally yet? So that's part of it. And well, thankfully, the fact that prior to 1.3, the game had already been released on Steam, Rift, Quest, Viveport, on a slew of headsets that are supported across those different storefronts. We inherited a lot of that work already. So it was like Trey said, it was kind of a matter of take how the one-handed weapons work and just sort of reuse those systems in a way that makes sense for the two-handed grip for the two-handed weapons. And that got us a good starting point to go from there. Now, Dwayne, you mentioned challenges for two-handed weapon play. I think one challenge that we definitely struggled with was how should the grip work? Like, I think originally the idea was, you summon the weapon with your main hand, as we say, and then you sort of grab it with your offhand as well. I guess I'll use Fate's End as an example, that giant sword, like summon, grab, and then, okay, I'm doing it. I'm doing two-handed weapon stuff. Originally, we had a system in place such that if your offhand grip ever got too far away from the main hand grip, the offhand grip would automatically let go. And we wanted this to be like kind of a skill challenge of like, it's important that you actually sort of move your hands as if you were wielding a real weapon like that. We wanted the game to, Until You Fall, I think one of its strengths is it has a pretty good visceral feel. Like, it's important that you actually do wide swings, even for one-handed weapons. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to try to retain that as best we could for two-handed weapons too. We didn't want to make it so that you could easily just kind of put your offhand behind your back and just kind of waggle the weapon. We didn't want like waggle play. So our original implementation was, it's important that you keep your offhand really close to your main hand. And while I think that was a good initial idea, and it was kind of in line with the design pillars of our project, in practice, it was more frustrating than it was getting in the way of fun. And so we eventually kind of moved away from that approach to just be, you still have to grab with both, but there's no automatic letting go of your offhand. Like, as soon as you press the right buttons to grab, like, that's always going to be the case. And I think we kind of solved it in that like your offhand is still important in that it's still driving the orientation of the weapon as you move it around. So like if you want to be blocking really well, you still need to get your offhand in the action here to actually be moving around, which did feel like until you fall. So I think we struggled a little bit with that initial approach that felt good and right, but then when we actually started playing it more often and seeing how others were struggling with it, we realized, maybe this isn't the right way to do it. Because as a development team that had kind of inherited this project from past development teams, we just wanted to make sure that we were doing right by the original design intent too, right? And so we were kind of, there's a tension there between, are we doing what the past designers would have wanted us to do versus we have to do what feels good for our players too.
Sure. But I mean, I was just in it right before the stream, and it's still very anti-waggle, so I still think that that's really, really good.
Yeah, the previous dev team that originally worked on Until You Fall, did a fantastic job of setting us up for success with all of their systems. We were able to build upon something that was already so solid, which really helped with our process. But yeah, the fact that you can't just waggle the controllers, a lot of those things came from the original design team.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. So out of the there's 3 two-handed weapons, right? You have Fate's End, the Cold Iron Great Axe, and the Captain's Warhammer. Do you guys have a favorite out of the 3?
Ooh, I'm gonna have to go with Fate's End, I think. Just having this incredibly massive sword that you're able to charge into enemies with, there's something about it that feels so good. I love pairing it with the Rokari Keenblade to really get up the combo limit, so you could take out knights in just one fell swoop. Oh, it just felt fantastic, and chaining together charges into smaller enemies, knocking them all out in one go. It just there's nothing like it. It was a very different feeling weapon from all the other ones we had. And I think that's what made it so special.
Yeah. And for me, I think it's the Cold Iron Great Axe because that is the first two-handed weapon that I beat the game with myself. So like it holds a special place in my heart. And the Vicious Strike, the new super that was on that, I think that was the first time I like really adjusted my gameplay to try to maximize the use of the super. Like I think before that, supers were often like kind of a utility for me of just like temporarily put this bad guy in stasis, so I don't have to worry about it. But like the Cold Iron Great Axe was like Vicious Strike was like, okay, what upgrades am I going to take in this run to maximize what I get out of Vicious Strike? Like Vicious Strike was a core, a core supporting pillar of my run strategy, and it was awesome to have a plan, get the upgrades you needed, and like execute that plan well in the late game, where like you're planning ahead and like killing the empowered knights before they even get to do their dash attack against you after you first break them. Like that just felt so good. It felt like you're cheating a little bit, but I think that's just like that's the power of a good plan well executed.
Yeah, so I'm a fan of the Cold Iron Great Axe as well. I mean, before that, my favorite weapon is Heart Splitter.
Ooh, yeah.
And I used a Heart Splitter and the Rokari. Was it the Rokari Keenblade?
The small dagger?
No,
the axe.
I used Heart Splitter and whatever dagger with. I just had it. The other dagger with a soul.
Oh, the Ritual Dagger.
Ritual Dagger. Thank you.
Yep.
And I mean, you get Heart Splitter and what Empowered Strike. 3, you could have Soulburn with it as well, and then Soulburn 4. Oh man, just raining, right? So it's a beautiful thing. I haven't played too. Max was talking about the hammer. I haven't played too much with the hammer just yet, but I have a feeling I'd like that too. But the Cold Iron Great Axe, you guys did me well, so I appreciate that.
Nice.
Let's see. There are a couple more things in the chat. Marcusar, I know you're talking about PSVR. We're gonna get to it. I promise. Relax. We have some things to talk about. So you talked about Vicious Strike. So there were a couple of new supers as well with the weapons. Vicious Strike with the Great Axe, Titan Strength with Fate's End, and Fate's End is Adam's. I think Adam said it in the chat. Fate's End is Adam's favorite weapon. He almost beat the game with it straight up. So
wow.
that was fun to watch. Um, did you think were these supers planned to be added whenever you were putting the two-handed weapons in, or did you feel like that these weapons needed a super? So what was the design points behind that?
So pretty early in the project, we had a big team brainstorm where we all just came together and brainstormed what the identities of these weapons would be. So what sort of traits might they have? What sort of supers could they potentially have? And we really built up these cool identities of the weapons being very distinct from one another. The supers felt like a core part of that, I think, just in that they really define the weapons, especially Vicious Strike for the Cold Iron Great Axe. That really is the defining feature of that weapon. So those were built with the supers in mind, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the supers were just like a in addition to like the base stats and the look and feel of the weapon and like the traits that you get at level 1 and level 5, the super, like I think all those parts, like when they come together, have to feel like they're all kind of mutually supporting the core design of these new weapons. And thankfully, and the super I think is such a flashy and like outsized aspect, like piece of that puzzle, that fairly early on, as Trey said, we wanted to like figure out what supers would feel right given what we wanted these weapons to be, for sure.
Yeah, and it wasn't certain that we'd be able to get the supers in the first place. Our engineers did a great job of getting them in quickly, which is why, unfortunately, the hammer doesn't have a new super. We just didn't have time for it, unfortunately. We talked about some things like hitting the ground causes a big shock wave that goes out, or being able to knock back a bunch of enemies at once, or we had a lot of cool ideas thrown around, but just given our scope and our time, we just didn't have room for it, unfortunately.
That'd be pretty cool. Maybe for the future, that right?
There we go. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, cool. Let's get to a couple more questions. David asks, what two-handed designs didn't make the cut and why? And what makes for a successful design in this VR space regarding this feature? So let me, as you guys think about it, let me find that so you guys can read it yourselves. So yeah, there's two questions there.
Yeah.
So first, what two-handed designs didn't make the cut, and what makes for a successful design in this VR space regarding the feature?
I think sort of the so in the game, it's blocking attacks and doing those crit strikes that are like slashing a particular direction. So weapons that kind of have that baked in affordance are like the ones we have in game now. Like, for example, let's say we gave you a spear. Like a spear is kind of classically like just a thrusting weapon. And I don't think like, well, something like a glaive, which has more of a blade for like slashing, I think would fit better. Like a spear, again, when someone's holding a virtual weapon in your hand, they're going to have an intuitive idea of how to use it. And we want to make sure that intuition aligns well with the mechanics of the game. So something like a spear, where it's all about like, thrust, that didn't quite align with what we wanted players to do in the game to adhere to the existing mechanics of it. So I think an example is the spear. Like, we thought about it. We're like, that doesn't really work. And also, I think any two-handed weapon that doesn't have sort of a firm link between both hand grips, like for example, you'll see it's like a double-sided sword with like a chain in between for like spinning and stuff. Like I think our design required like a fixed connection point between the two grips on the weapon for blocking purposes. So that was another thing that kind of culled some of the other ideas that we had early on.
Yeah, there's some pretty wacky ideas. I saw like a bow and arrow one, I think, which was pretty interesting, where you had to block with it until you charged up a ability that you shoot the arrow with. But all of these weapons were actually built by the previous team, and were kind of sort of in the game already. They didn't control well. They didn't have their final looks or anything, so we took those and polished them into their final forms. But I think some fans actually found in the files like some of those old models of the weapons. But I guess it wasn't necessarily up to us which weapons would get in. That was kind of a previous team sort of thing.
Yeah. I think another, like, as far as the successful design, I think the weight and feel of these weapons was important too. Like, we wanted all of these to feel kind of bigger and heavier than any of the one-handed weapons, because there's like an in-game sort of spring-based weighting system, so that you can't just grab a super heavy sword and like fling it around like it's a very light sword. We wanted them to feel right given the size of them, and I think given that, like, all the new two-handed weapons had to be stuff that felt big and kind of chunky, and something that you had to really use two hands to be able to effectively wield it. Like, one of my favorite moments of early development was like the first time we got Fate's End into the game. Like, you go grab it with one hand and it just like, it just like flops down to the floor like a noodle. And I just loved how in like the first 2 seconds of interacting with this weapon, it was already telling me the story of, I am very heavy. You need to use both hands to wield me. And that, I think that given the current two-handed weapon design, like, who knows where we may go in the future, but given the current design of these have to be big, heavy, you got to use two-handed weapons. That's another thing that filtered into what weapons we chose. Big, heavy, honking weapons that screamed, wield me with two hands.
Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different conversations about what other, weapons could have been. I remember one weapon that, I think the first dev team, Patrick was thinking about like the ball and chain, but
Ooh, yeah.
but then like that would have to be two hands, because like you have this chain, but you have this huge iron ball that's supposed to feel really heavy.
Yeah.
So how are you supposed to get it working? And yeah, so just like you were saying, Rob, with the VR space and how to make it feel good, and there wasn't at that time a good answer, for that. So that's very cool. But who knows? Maybe in the future. So that's super
Absolutely
exciting. So let's dive a little bit more. Do we have any more questions about weapons? Oh, Beekeeper asked about three-handed weapons. Yeah, they're being funny.
Whoa.
But are there any plans to incorporate multiplayer? So I know we get a lot of questions about multiplayer or co-op with Until You Fall. Do you guys have any comments about that?
Well, a sad truth of game development is, if you add like a, as we say, a tightly coupled multiplayer experience, like me and Trace both in our own headsets are going to like connect to one shared game experience and be in the same room, that tends to add a lot of extra work. Things that are relatively simple in a single player only experience get a lot more complicated when you have to maintain state across Trace and I's game experiences, so that when I kill a bad guy, Trace makes sure it sees that bad guy die, or maybe Trace and I both hit the same bad guy at the same time, like, and we're like competing for number of kills, like depending on how the packet order goes through the internet tubes, like it might change who actually gets the kill in that situation. So that is kind of a big hurdle that we have to be sure we want to do. We have to be sure that the extra effort to make that shared experience is worth the additional dev time it would take to implement it well. That said, like there are other ways to. Well, I think Adam Kuta, shout out to him for the exemplary effort he has had in building a community around the Until You Fall game that doesn't rely on multiplayer at all. Like, his monthly challenges are a pretty awesome way for people to all share in the experience of a cool game, share in like the collective challenge of trying to play the game in an interesting and new way that doesn't require all the extra difficult work that it takes to make a tightly coupled network experience. And I guess who knows what the future may hold. Like, I know we had I probably can't even talk about that. We have ideas for cool ways to make people feel like there's more of a community experience within Until You Fall, while not adding like all the extra network aspects to it. Like there are some, that is a spectrum of like tightly coupled internet experience where Trace and I are both playing in the same virtual room. Kind of what Adam's doing now, sort of all offline, and maybe there's a happy medium somewhere in the middle that gives you more of, scratches that itch a little better than it does now, but doesn't require a ton of development resources. We'll see.
Right. Yeah. I think if there's a way to make the sociality in the game, right? I think that's what the goal is. So whatever that may look like, that might, like what you said, Rob, scratch that itch.
Yeah, like it'd be cool if I could, like, I complete a run and I could like send that run as a challenge to Trace, and like Trace would get the same sort of, the same rooms, the same enemies within that room. Maybe he gets the same weapons at the same level, and it's just this sort of like ping pong challenge of like who can do this faster, going back and forth until one of us just taps out and says, "You did it, you've won. I can't beat that."
That would be a lot of fun. Absolutely.
Yeah. I make no promises for that feature in the future, but I just this is an example off the top of my head for like a way that you can kind of get more of a, we're both playing Until You Fall more closely together while also not being in the same like internet shared room, if that makes sense.
And just like what Rap said, these are just ideas. These are not future plans. He's not rated off a design doc or anything.
That's right. Sure. We're just talking here. We're just talking.
Good stuff. But yeah, just like what Rob said, if you haven't joined the Until You Fall Discord yet and haven't seen the challenges, please jump in the Discord, see the challenges, watch the videos of people doing these challenges. They are a ton of fun. Mm-hmm. It helps you get better into the game, feel out the game more, see how people play in it. So it's a great way to be a part of a community and get that social aspect out of the game. So along with the two-handed weapons, the localization, Trace, you talked something earlier about the smooth turning and how that was a big suggestion from the community. So how important was it to get it into the game? And after you guys answer that, do you think it's a reason, or do you think it's a testament of the VR market getting bigger, that we could do more VR movement options, that people are getting more VR comfortable, getting their VR legs, or is this just getting a certain type of gamer that wants that smooth turning? So let's answer that first one. How important was it to get smooth turning into it, or was it because you crushed a lot out early? It's like, hey, we could do this too. So
it was actually a very important feature for us to get in. Accessibility at Schell games is a huge deal. It's something we always strive for in all of our games, and we know that a lot of players had a lot of issues with the snap turning. With like dizziness or motion sickness, anything like that. So getting smooth turning in was a great way to alleviate that and provide just different options for players. So just anything we could do that provided players with more options for how they could play the game and make it more comfortable for themselves were big wins for us. So that was definitely something we wanted early on, and we're focused on pretty hard.
And I will admit, I was a skeptic at first as to whether or not smooth turning was going to be a good way to play the game. I was a bit of a snap turning snob. But once we got the basic form in and I started playing it, I was like, you know what? I like this better. So, and I think this is another situation where listening to your players often helps you build a better experience. It forces you to kind of reach beyond the bounds of what you think is going to be good and listen to and think about suggestions that your player base has. And if you don't have a great reason, or it forces you to just, again, think a little, it pushes you out of your boundaries a little bit. And oftentimes, good ideas come from unexpected places too. Not that our player base is an unexpected place for good ideas to come from.
I mean, coming from the snap turning snob, I don't know. Yeah.
I know. Well, not anymore. I have seen the light, everybody. Smooth turning. That is my preferred way to play. And I think for another reason there is no best way to play the game from a turning standpoint. I think it's, if we can easily accommodate more ways for people to play our game, that's the important thing. Our goal should never be, what's the one way that this particular system should work? It's, what are a couple of ways that we can support all of them well that allow players to play the way they prefer, without feeling like they're at a disadvantage because of the way they prefer to play the game.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons we had the max turning speed for smooth turning so high, is because we didn't want players to be at a disadvantage if they chose smooth turning over snap turning. So we tried to match the top speed of smooth turning to the speed at which you'd snap to an enemy. So it's really quick, but some players really liked that.
Okay, good deal. So do you think it's more along the lines of the accessibility goals of the studio to make sure that it's accessible to however people want to experience the game, or do you think it's more of the expanding taste of the VR market? Is like, okay, well, we need to make it more accessible so it's more comfortable to the expanding VR market, or do you think it's a little bit of both? Because it could be.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Like,
Okay.
even though we've been making VR games at Schell Games for, gosh, years now.
Yeah.
I think it's still an evolving platform, and like, I don't think it's like a solved thing. Like, one could look at maybe the standard gamepad controller that you'll see with like an Xbox or a PlayStation, and like they basically have the same orientation of buttons and like thumbsticks and such, but I don't think VR is there yet. I think VR is still trying to figure out, even beyond the inputs themselves, like what buttons are on my controller, but like just how do you do stuff in VR? Like, in some sense, we have sort of reset the best practices of game design to VR. Like, it's almost like we're back in the original Nintendo days about how should players move through the virtual game world. And I think we're still kind of discovering those best practices even now within VR. Like, the VR experience is still new enough that we're still exploring it. So, and I think the nice thing is we get to kind of look at what other games do and what is successful for them, and we can try to incorporate some of the best ideas from other games into our new experiences too.
Yeah, sounds good. Trace, did you have anything to add to that?
I'd have to say I agree with Rob on that case. It's a little bit of both, but yeah, just anything we can do to make the games more accessible is always a win for us.
Yeah, and I'd agree too on a marketing standpoint that as the VR market grows, you have to be more accessible, right? Because
True, that's
more
a good
accessible
point.
is more marketable. So it helps everybody.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So along with the updates, along with the supers and everything, that there are 7 new achievements that people can, that players can get. Do you have a favorite, or was there one that like, oh, we gotta get this in because blank?
Well, we have kind of 2 different clusters of achievements. There's the 4 achievements that are tied to the different factions from the Discord server that are like identified with a particular pairing of weapons. And then there are 3 achievements that are based around speed runs and how quickly you can beat the game. And boy, on the one hand, I do love the faction ones, because on the one hand, I love achievements as like a way to remind players, hey, try it this way. Like, this will be a different experience for you. You should try this. And like, I see achievements as like a little breadcrumb trail for, hey, if you do these achievements, you're going to find more fun. And achievements that are as simple as like try to beat the game with this pair of weapons. I'm like, oh, okay. I would never thought to do that myself, but that little nudge from the achievements enough to send me down that path, and like maybe that'll be my new favorite like weapon pair to bring into runs in the future. So that's why I like the new weapon pairing ones, the new faction based ones. And it's also a shout out to our community, and like that is honoring our community. And I think, whenever you can honor your players in your game, you should do that, because without them, we don't have a game. And to the speedrun achievements, I did not realize how involved speedrunning was in our game until I saw some of our beta tester videos of how quickly they can blast through, where I can't even process visually what they're doing, and they are just muscle memorying their way through rooms faster than I can imagine one could do so. And again, I think those 3 achievements kind of open the door to our players for like, hey, speedrunning's a thing. And if you don't know what speedrunning is, all of a sudden there's an achievement saying try to beat it in 25 minutes, and you're like, huh. And I think that makes you play in a way that's completely different from how you may play normally. It really pushes you to be outside of your comfort zone. And in that down that new path lies challenge. And I think interesting challenge is like a core principle of Until You Fall. So I love that all 7 of these new achievements definitely push you to find those new layers of challenge and fun.
Yeah, it was amazing to get the faction achievements in. I know our fans have these awesome factions that they belong to, so it was so cool just to like represent that in the game and actually have that made official, in a sense. But at the same time, the speedrun ones, I feel like those also really generate a sense of community as well, because you see people talking about which builds they've been going for to get this speed run, or oh, you should try using this weapon with that weapon, working together to come up with these different tactics and methods of getting through as fast as possible. So it's been really fun to see the speedrunning challenges kind of develop a little community around themselves as well.
Some of the speedrun challenges are just mind-boggling. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Especially with I think I want to talk a little bit about the beta testing and that process too. But before that, just watching some of the beta testers, like, oh yeah, I got the weapons and I already beat it. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah, that was kind of nuts.
And they're like, oh yeah, here's the video, and it watches like, no, they 100% did it. Just crushed it. It was so cool. So with the beta testing, we've been doing some beta testing with our Discord servers for quite some time now. So along with that process, how did you design the beta process for 1.3 based on what we did in the past, or were there some additional updates or improvements that you guys did for the beta testing for 1.3? I'm trying to think myself, and I feel like you did some improvements on it.
Yeah, sadly, I can't speak to the specifics of how we did the beta testing in the past. Like, Until You Fall was not private beta, the thing you do on Steam where it's not officially live.
Yeah, it was an early access title.
Thank you. I think early access was the way we had done it in the past, where we just buy the game, boom, you're in. You can help tell us how to make it better. And this time around, we went with a smaller subset of players. I think we grabbed about 20 folks and just pulled them into a private channel in the Discord server. And one thing that I think was really effective, well, there was communication with that group within the Discord channel. That was great. Questions were asked. Feedback was sought. But we also invited folks to, hop on a Discord video, like share them playing the game in Discord while some developers would watch. And seeing firsthand how they played we learned a lot just from watching how they played. But 2, it allowed us to have a conversation with them where like we would see them do something, we could like ask them, oh, what'd you do there? Like, tell us more about that. Or maybe they could tell us in greater depth and show us something that they felt didn't feel right and tell us why it didn't feel right. And like being able to see it firsthand and have that conversation directly with players, with people that had had hours of experience in our game. Oh, that was such a, a great conduit to like help us better understand how how our fans play this game and react to it much more quickly than some of the much more like a forum post or like a post in the Discord.
Right.
Like that's great. We love that feedback, but that pales in comparison to being able to watch people play directly and have a live conversation with them about what they're doing and why.
And we had a lot of really big decisions that were made during the beta that changed kind of the direction of the game directly due to the beta testers. Like Rob mentioned earlier, the grip break issue, where if you brought your hand too far away from the weapon, it would break your grip. That was originally in place, but through beta testing, we found that people just didn't like that. So it was pretty clear to us that needed to change, and we changed it, and people liked the change. We also had a change with how Fate's End controlled. Originally, it was controlled only with one hand, so you could do whatever you wanted with the other hand. You could set that behind your back, but there were a lot of issues with that, kind of breaking immersion, which we found through beta testing. So we changed that as well. So yeah, now you've got to hold it with both hands together.
Fate's End.
I mean, you got to, right? You got to
got
pick
to.
sword, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. Let's see. So we got a couple more minutes here. Let's see. I will take this one. In the last Meta Quest Gaming Showcase, the host mentioned Schell Games' 3 new projects in the next 2 years. Without going into details, is until you fall involved. Well, without going into details, we have 3 new projects that we will have with Meta. So look forward to that when those announcements come.
Nice try, Maxima. Nice try.
I love giving answers to details. Those answers are easy. Let's see, Marcosaur, any love for the PSVR version in the future? At least acknowledge that if it missed out on this update. So we are waiting for what the hardware looks like and how it performs on the PSVR 2 before making any other decisions there. So we know that it is up and coming, and so we are waiting for that. So any updates for the game will be coming. Will be discussed once the PSVR 2 stuff comes out. So there's the word for that. Let's see. Getting the best out of 1.3 updates. So what are you guys most proud about for 1.3? I mean, you guys squeezed a lot in from just localization, snap turning, and quality of life. So what are you guys most proud of?
I've got to say I'm most proud of the design of the new weapons. I feel like they really add different play styles to the game, which is something that is always so interesting to see. Especially Cold Iron Great Axe. We've seen so many players really adjust their mindset going in for the low health, high damage runs, which is it's a different play style, which is always really cool to see. But yeah, I think the new weapons are the most proud point for me.
Yeah, and piggybacking on what Trace was saying, like we could have released 3 new one-handed weapons with the 1.3 release, and that would have been fine. That would have been great. But one thing that I'm especially proud of, I think Trace alluded to, was the fact that you have to use these weapons in a different way, that like you have to wield 2 hands, and now there's like, when do I pull out my offhand weapon while I have this 2-handed weapon? Or do I bring 2 2-handed weapons into the game? When I was first playing with 2-handed weapons, I felt like I was playing the game for the first time again, because a lot of the skills that I had learned when playing with 2 one-handed weapons didn't apply anymore. And I had to sort of like relearn how to block like this, like with the 2-handed, with the Cold Iron Great Axe, for example. And all of a sudden, here's this new skill set that is very much in line with the skills that I have already mastered with Until You Fall. But I'm being forced to kind of learn this kind of new skill. And I don't know. In a sense, I feel like the 2-handed weapons have added more value and more experience, more cool experiences to the game than just 3 new weapons. Like the two-handed aspect of that has like opened up this new door to here's this cool set of skills that you as a player now get to master that would not have been opened if these were just new one-handed weapons.
Good stuff. Let's see. How about this one? Vertigo asked, and sorry, Vertigo, I saw your Discord question, but thank you for asking it on YouTube as well. Is there anything the community can do to encourage further development on more Until You Fall content?
Well, I think for us, a factor that matters when it comes to what we decide people at Schell Games are going to work on is the size of the player base and sales. So I guess anything that you can do by word of mouth to share how much you enjoy Until You Fall and how awesome of a game you think it is. Like if that can contribute to, friends or just other random folks on the internet seeing, oh, Until You Fall, what's this? Oh, Vertigo 1 really loves this. Maybe I should check it out too. Like, unfortunately, we're a business, and the bottom line of business, a factor of our bottom line is how much Until You Fall it sells. And if it's a product that a lot of people have bought and enjoy, it's a safer bet when it comes to spending development time to add more content to that experience. Oh, sorry, that feels so capitalistic. But unfortunately, that is part of the truth of the industry that we're in. I wish I had a better answer for you, Vertigo, but there it is. Sing its praises to the rooftops.
There you go.
Make cool content for it. Like the videos that I've seen some of the folks in the Discord server make silly fun stuff, like 3 people all sharing their screens, just like playing the game all at the same time, chatting back and forth to silly, ridiculous music. I love that. Mm-hmm. Little things like that could probably help people discover it that might not otherwise discover it. So things like that.
And we're also looking for ways to do different types of collaborations and partnerships with other games and studios. So if you guys know of either upcoming games or other games that you guys play that are running a similar vein of Until You Fall, that we can expose people to expose the game to a new audience, let us know, and we'll definitely try to reach out to that studio, and if we could do a bundles or some type of challenge tie-in that we're almost running towards the end of April, I think, with Walkabout Golf. Adam, if I got that name right, you could double check me. Oh yes, I got it right. Woohoo! So Walkabout Mini Golf. Okay, I was 90% there. So so doing those type of collaborations as well, I'll raise the profile of the game. So if you have any other suggestions, drop them in Discord to Adam, and we'll figure out if that's something that we can do together. Cool. So last question for the team. What new options have you seen players enjoy or look forward to players discovering?
So I want to see someone break the game over the back of Titan Strength, which is the Fate Super. I know I personally don't feel like I've really figured out a way to optimize the power of Titan Strength. So I'm very curious to see what our player base has already done in that front, as far as like, I'm going to make Titan Strength amazing. I'm going to especially bringing two-handed weapons. Like I've dabbled a little bit in like swapping back and forth as appropriate for like super use or different enemies, but I did not. I was just dipped my toe into the water of that. So someone accepting the challenge of bring two-handed weapons and use Titan Strength to maximize the impact of both of those weapons. I would love to see some videos of that.
Let's see. So one thing that our QA team discovered is that you can do, I don't want to give too much away, but you can do sort of a spin move, something you'd see out of like Zelda, using smooth turning controls. If you crank the speed up high enough, and it doesn't work super well, But I would love to see someone, perfect that and really knock out some enemies using this super secret spin move.
The all spin attack run, that would be hilarious to watch as well.
That'd be incredible.
All right, Until You Fall community, you got 2 challenges
Oh, man.
just out from the Until You Fall team, Titan Strength Run and Zelda Spin Move. So that's excellent. So Rob, Trace, thank you guys so much. The audience, thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yeah.
And we just have a couple. Oh, Vertigo. Vertigo says to Rob.
Yeah.
There we go.
Very
We're gonna
nice.
see some
I knew you had
videos.
any
Super
vertigo.
exciting.
I know. All right, I look forward to it.
Good stuff. All right, so everybody, thank you for tuning in. If you are new to the Schell Games YouTube, please like, subscribe, and enable your notifications. We're regularly putting up different videos, trailers. We have a lot new content coming out in the next couple months with all the different things that we're working on. We have some events coming up. Will be around all around the country in the next, I guess, around the world in the next couple months. And so we'll have more announcements there. So that'll be exciting. Watch the socials, Discord, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram for more sales information that's coming up for all of our different original IPs. And then next month, the May Dinner with the Devs is unique pathways to the games industry. So there's not one way to get into working for video games.
Right.
For the disciplines, like we have artists, engineers, designers, and producers, but there's also ops team with marketing, accounting, HR, IT, administration. So there's all types of ways that you can get into the video game studio to work in video games. And we're going to bring a bunch of people there to talk about their unique way of getting into the games industry. That is May 25th at 5 p.m. Still on the Schell Games YouTube. We will see you next month. Thank you for joining us today.